Nun Gimel Amud Base, and we're right at the top of the page. So now you can't make a bracha on the candle of Havdalah until you get benefit from it. What exactly does that mean? We're going to discover a machlokes amoraim between Rav Yehuda and Rava, but until we get to Rava, it's going to be quite a long route. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Loi Yoy Oisuma tongue twister. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Loi Yei Oisu. Sure, I'll get it right. Loi Oisu Mamish. It doesn't literally mean that you have to get direct benefit from it. Rather, if you would be close to the light and you'd be able to see the light that's strong enough that were you to be next to it, you could use its light. Even if you're far away and you see that light, which were you to be close, you could use it, that is sufficient. Part 2, Rav Ashi says, so we have Rav Ashi and Rav Yehuda very much in support of this idea that you don't have to literally be near the light, it has to be a light that if you were near it, you could use it. The Gemara enters in part 3 attack with a major critical key phrase, which is an attack of multiple Amoraim against a single Amora. You had a candle that was hidden in your arms, on your lap. Obviously, it's talking about a candle that was in a lantern, because otherwise you would be a burning cinder. So it's talking about a candle that was in a lantern and was covered over in your lap, or it was actually in the lantern and perhaps it was a little bit more exposed, or else you saw a flame but you didn't use its light, or else you were able to use the light but you did not see the flame itself. You need two criteria. You can't make a bracha until you see the flame and you're able to use it for its light. Now, the Gemara says it's all well and good. We understand the case when you can use the light and not see the flame. That's mishkachas law. We find that the kaima b'keren is obvious, that you're in a corner, which means that the candle's on the other side of the corner. You can still utilize the light, but you can't see the flame. But what would be the case where you see the flame and you don't use it for its light? Surely is it not that you're far away and therefore you can see it but you can't use it? And that would be a refutation to Rav Yehuda Amar Rav and Rav Ashi. Part 4, they respond, Kagoin, or the Gemara on their behalf, Kagoin to Amya V'azla, it is slowly extinguishing. It's a flame that you can see it, but you can't use it. The light's not bright enough to be used, and therefore it does not constitute a valid Havdalah candle. End of part 4. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav and Rav Ashi have defended themselves. Tanu Rabban, and now we're entering into Brachos in the second Gemara on the page. Tanu Rabban Gechalim Loi Chashois Mevarchim Alehem Oimemois Ein Mevarchim Alehem. The Brachos differentiates between two types of coals. If they are whispering coals, you can make a bracha on them for your light. If they are embers which are kind of subsiding, don't make a bracha. The Gemara wants to know, what do these things look like? In part 2, it asks an information question. Hey, what does it mean that they were whispering? Part 3 gives us an answer. Anywhere, if you would bring into them a small chip of wood, like we would say probably a matchstick, and it would automatically catch a light, that would be considered loichashois, and that would be okay. Which is puzzling to me, because I don't know how much light, coals can be super, super hot and not generate that much light. But it seems over here, if it's hot enough to light a match, so that's enough light required to make a Havdalah. Check that out on your next camping trip. Iboilu is part 4, double-pronged dilemma. Iboilu, oimemais or oimemais. The Gemara wants to know, how do we spell oimemais, with an aleph or with an ayin? Toshma, we bring a raya. Amar Rav Chisda bar Avdimi, says Rav Chisda in the name the son of Avdimi, Arazim loy amamuhu began Elokim. The cedars did not dim it in the garden of Hashem. So this is referring to the beauty of the cedars, that they were not dimmed even in relation to the Garden of Eden. Now, what is the context of the pasuk? Go look that up. The point, however, for our Gemara is it's spelled with an ayin, and therefore the correct spelling is with an ayin. And that's all been this massive parenthetic statement. Now we're on to Rava, who actually is arguing on Rav Yehuda and Rav Ashi. For Rava Amar Ye Oisu Mamish literally means you have to get benefit from it directly. Okay, so the Gemara asks an information question. Now, how bright does the light have to be so that you can get that benefit? To be able to differentiate between two coins, an isar and a pundion, and they're very similar, so the light has to be bright enough to make the differentiation. Whereas Chizkiah says, in order to differentiate between the weight called the meluzma of Tiberius and the one of Tzipori, they were very similar, so you'd had to have quite a decent level of light to be able to differentiate between the two, and that's how much light you need to make this bracha of Ma'orei Ha'esh. Rav Yehuda Mevarich Adabei Adna. We're going back. Rav Yehuda, who was our original opinion, and he said you can be far away, he would make a bracha on the candle of Adadaila, on the candle of the house of Adadaila, which is quite far away from him. Rava, who argues with him, he'd make a bracha on Beiguria Barchama, who is his next door neighbor and very close by, and he could use the light. Abai would make a bracha on the house of the son of his father, which I don't know. Rashi pointed out the previous two to know if they're far or near. I have no idea if this is further or closer. It appears to be that would be a closer because it sounds like it's his brother's house. So I'm not quite sure, but those are the three opinions. We kind of need to figure out, is Abai a third opinion, or is he just going with one of the two previous opinions? Not clear to me. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Ein mechazrin al ha'or. Big kiddush is Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. You don't go looking for light. Kederech shemechazrin al mitzvah, like the way you do when you're looking for mitzvahs. Meaning, if you want to really make Havdalah, you need to go and look for a glass of wine. If you don't find it, you have to put in effort to get it. It is not the same with finding a candle. If you don't have a candle, don't have a candle. If you happen to come across a light, make a bracha. Says Rav Zer, I initially would have gone looking for the candle, given Shama Laha to Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. But once I heard what Rav Yehuda Amar Rav said, I no longer do I go looking for the candle. But if I happen to bump into a candle automatically, then I will be mavrichna. Got it right. Now we're going back to the Mishnah, and the Mishnah says, what happens if you ate and then you forgot to bench? Do you go back to where you were eaten to make the bracha? We have a machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai say you have to go back, and Beis Hillel say no, you don't. Says Rav Zvid, and those say Rav Dimi Ba'aba, the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is only when you forgot about it, meaning it was not intentional. But if you intentionally went elsewhere to bench, everyone says you got to go back and make the bracha. Gemara asks in part 2, Pshita, that's obvious. V'shachach tnan, it says in the Mishnah you forgot. Ma'udatem, the Gemara answers in part 3, what would you have thought? Hu adin afilu b'meizid. Actually, the case is true of Mazid as well. There would be the same machlokes. So why did we mention forgetting? And the reason we chose the word in the case of forgetting, to teach us the strength of Beis Shammai, that even if you forgot, you still have to go back to where you were. Had it taught you intentionally, you wouldn't have known that. So therefore it's important to teach the Chish of Beis Shammai, but it's not coming to exclude intentional, deliberate relocation. But that's why we need Rav Zvid, Vitem Rav Dimi Bar Abba, to teach us that it's actually not true, and there is a differentiation between intentional and unintentional, and if it was unintentional, then the machlokes exists, but in an intentional case, Beis Hillel would agree, you have to go back and bench where you ate. Part 4, Tanya, Amru lehem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Said Beis Hillel to Beis Shammai, the Divreichem, according to what you're saying, Misha Achol Bereish Abir, a person that ate at the top of the mansion, V'shachach, and he forgot to bench, V'yarat, and he went down all the way to the bottom, V'loi Beirach, and he didn't make a bracha, Yachzor Lereish Abir V'yavarach, does he have to go all the way back? Imagine, all the way back, I mean, there were no elevators or lifts, and you had to go back a 21-story building. and you forgot to bench, would you go all the way up the stairs? Oh my gosh, it's such a hassle. Amr lein Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Say Beis Shammai back to Beis Hillel. L'divreichem, according to what you're saying, Misha shachach aron l'kit b'reish haber. Say you forgot your wallet 21 stories up. Lo yale everything. Wouldn't you go back together? Of course you would. So l'kavod atzmai hu oile l'kvod shemaim lo kol shekain. If you're willing to go back up for your own honor, surely you should go up for the honor of Hashem. And that draws to close. Part 4, part 5. Hanu Trey Talmidi. There were these two students. One followed the pin of Beis Shammai. It was shoygeg. He forgot. He went back to the place where he ate to bench. And he actually found a wallet filled with gold. One intentionally went and benched not where he ate, and he was eaten by a lion. Now that's very, very, very seemingly out of proportion to what he did wrong. What did he do wrong? He did a mitzvah d'oraisa, but he didn't do it in the ideal place. And therefore what he is punished by a gruesome death of being consumed by a lion. So that really, I suppose, requires really a lot of thinking. New stage in Rabbi Bar, this stage 5, Rabbi Bar Chana, so Rabbi Bar Chana was going with a convoy. So he had bread and he forgot to bench, and the convoy continued on its way, and in half an hour, I don't know how long afterwards, he suddenly realized he needed to go back and bench. But he was in a bit of a quandary because, those convoys, they needed to go in groups because they were prone to being attacked by animals or by bandits. So he couldn't leave them, but they have to either wait for him or come back with him. And he realized presenting with them with the fact that he hadn't benched may not for them be the most compelling argument. He said to himself, what should I do? If I say to them that I forgot to bench, you can bench over here. Don't worry, God's everywhere. Wherever you bless, you're blessing Hashem. That's okay. It's better that I'll say to them, I forgot a dove made from gold. So he went for it. Amalu, Anturli da Anshoy Yun Dava. Please wait for me over here. I'm going to go back to fetch my golden dove. Azil Ubarich went back and he benched. And no sooner had he finished benching when he found a golden dove. So now the Gemara wants to know, why did he use a golden dove as a thing that he'd forgotten? I mean, he could have said anything. It's such an unlikely thing for him to choose. And what is so different about a dove? Because the Jewish people are compared to a dove. That the wings of a dove are covered in silver, and the wings in greenish gold, which means it's a beautiful description of the wings of a yoina, and it's this hint to the fact that this golden dove is really a real way, I suppose, when the light catches the wings of the dove, they may look a kind of gold. But either way, just like a dove is only saved by its wings, either by flying away or hitting its kind of attackers with its wings. So too Jews are saved by mitzvahs. In other words, our mitzvahs are our wings, which is a really pertinent analogy of what creates our defense, is the fact that we can elevate ourselves above the mundane through taking off with the wings of our mitzvahs. There's a lot more to think about in that analogy, but we're going to go on to how long can you wait before you bench. Ad Amosai, Kamashiriku. So we said until the food is digested. The Gemara asks in part 1, and how long is that amount for digestion? In the first answer, in the second part of the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan says, as long as you're not hungry. Reish Lakish argues in part 3, and he says, as long as you're thirsty because of your eating, because of your meal, then that's considered you can still bench. In part 4, Rav Yemer Bar Shalmi Lemar Zutra, Sid Rav Yemer Bar Shalmi Lemar Zutra, and others say Rav Yemer Bar Shizbi Lemar Zutra. Mi Amar Reish Lakish Hachid. Reish Lakish really said that it's as long as you're still thirsty. But Rav Ami said in the name of Reish Lakish that the amount of time that it takes to digest your food is in order the amount of time that would take you to walk 4 million, which is approximately 4 kilometers. or I think we say 72 minutes. And therefore, how can you reconcile these two different measurements given by Brachos? The Gemara says in part 5, Lo kasha kan ba'achil meruba kan ba'achil moites. When you've eaten a lot, the amount of time of digestion takes longer, and that's walking for 4 million. But when you've eaten less, so then as long as you're still thirsty, you can bench. When you stop being thirsty from the meal, you cannot bench. Now I'm not quite sure how that works, being thirsty from the meal. I can understand the idea of getting hungry again, because that's something to do with food. The thirst would seemingly depend on the kind of and the nature of the food you had. I mean, if you had really kind of juicy, not salty foods, so then you probably you wouldn't be thirsty. And if you had really salty foods, you'd be really, really thirsty. So I'm not quite sure how to understand the share that Rabbi Reish Lakish brings. Time for you to do some work. And me. So now, at the end of the Mishnah, we said that if you, the wine came in the end of the meal, and there the Gemara says that if you heard a bracha, but you didn't hear the beginning of a kusi, you can't answer Amen, but for a Jew you can. Part 1 says, is this to say that by a Jew, even though you don't hear the entire bracha, you can answer Amen? But if you haven't heard the bracha, how can you possibly fulfill your obligation of making a bracha when you didn't hear it? It's talking about when you did not eat with them and you're just answering Amen to the bracha. So if you want to fulfill your mitzvah of the bracha, to be your mitzvah of the bracha, then you have to hear the entire thing. But if you just want to answer Amen and you catch the last bit, that's okay. Part 3, and this is enforced by Rav Nachman in the name of Rabbi Bar Avua. Amar le Rav Chia, part 4, Lebrei. Sorry, Amar le Rav Chia Brei. Rav said to Chia's son, Bri, my son, Chatoif, seize ubarech. If you have an opportunity that they're passing around the glass of wine, you should seize the opportunity to lead the benching. And this is in part 5. Chatoif ubarech. You should seize the bracha. The Gemara asks in part 6, does this indicate that the person who makes a bracha is even better than the one that answers Amen? Tanya, do we not learn in a brayso that the person who answers Amen is far greater than the one who makes a bracha? And Rabbi Nuhurai emphasizes this with a passionate oath. Hashemayim, by the heavens, Kainu, it's true. I'll bring you a proof. Shaharei gul yorin yordin umizgarin b'milchama b'gborin yordin umiznatzkin. Because the way the war works, now I'm not quite sure what these divisions are. Seems that they sent in the first division of troops who would prepare for the battle, and perhaps it looks like they'll provoke the enemies, but they won't actually do the job. And then the real warriors will come in afterwards and destroy the foe. So you see that in relation to this, the bracha seems to be the preparatory stage, but the Amen is the real victory, which is a fascinating, to me, analogy. Why would this be comparable to making a bracha? There's a war at stake, and the bracha is the first guard, and then the Amen are the warriors. Very strange comparison, something for me to think about. Gemara continues in part 7, Tnahi, it's a machlokes tanoim. What's better, making a bracha or answering Amen? To Tanya, we learned in a brayso, Amen b'mashma. When we say that a person gets a bracha, gets a reward as both a person who says a bracha and both a person who answers Amen, but we hasten to reward the person making the bracha more so than the one that answered Amen. So this is the other opinion that says actually making a bracha is greater than Amen, and that would support what Rav said to Chia's son, and that's also what Rav Huna said to Rabbi, his son. New part of the Gemara, which is part 8. Boy minei Shmuel mirav. Shmuel asked a shayla from his colleague Rav. What about answering Amen after the children in Cheder, in their school? In part 9, Rav answers Shmuel, Amar lei, echad achar kol oinim, I mean, you can answer Amen after anyone, chutz mitanoikes beis Rama, except for children at school, hoyel v'lismamid asuim. The reason is because they are saying the brachas, they're being taught how to say the brachas, and therefore they're not quite sure what they're doing, and they're doing it as a learning process, not as a blessing process. And therefore, these words only apply when it's not them reading the haftarahs. Back in the day, the little children used to read the prophet section of the Torah reading called the haftarah, and if they'd make brachas, then you'd answer Amen because they were intending to make a bracha. At the time of them after, you do answer because then the intention is to make a bracha, whereas when they're in school, they're simply learning the text of the brachas. And now we're on to a new sugya, and now the sugya is going to start to talk about, what about oil? Is that going to stop me from benching or not? We learned in a brayso, Shem Akiv Zabracha, Divrei Rabbi Zilai. Rabbi Zilai said in the brayso that if you haven't yet anointed your hands with oil, you can't bench. Rabbi Zilai argues and he says, no, you can bench even without putting oil on your hands. Rabbi Acha says, fragrant, beautiful oil is a preventative of making the Birkas Hamazon. You need to have it to get the icky stuff off your hands and to make your hands smell geschmack, like one day hand cream, where the big thing is the smell. Rabbi Zumai says, Kshem shemezuham pasol avodah kach yadayim mezuhamois. He says, just like a person who's smelly and disgusting can't be suitable for temple worship, so too hands which are dirty can't make a bracha, and therefore you do have to do something to make them fragrant and pleasurable. Now, how he's arguing on the previous opinions is not clear, and if he's saying the same thing as Rabbi Acha, that Shemen HaTov is Ma'akev, or any Shemen, very, very ambiguous words of Rabbi Zuhumawi. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak Ano, said Rav Nachman Yitzchak Ano, lo ziloi, v'lo zivoi, v'lo zohimai, yodan. I don't know about all these previous opinions with these actually very, very strange names, especially because the names almost have meanings. They have meanings. Ziloi means belittle, zivoi means radiant, zohimai means polluted. So it's very, very odd names. Never seen them before, and therefore that could explain Rav Nachman's dismissal of them. He says, I know a brayso, it says Rav Marav, and there are those who said it was actually in a brayso taught when it says in the pasuk in Kedoshim that you should make yourselves holy, it's referring to washing before the meal. Kedoshim, and that you should make yourselves holy again, that's referring to the water at the end of the meal. Ki kodesh ani, when it says in the pasuk because I am holy, that's referring to using oil. Ani Hashem lekeichem zu bracha, I am the Lord your God, that is for the bracha. So over here in this brayso, you see that you do need, and part and parcel of the process of getting ready for benching is anointing your hands, wiping on that beautiful, delicious shemen hand cream style thing. Hadran alach elu dvarim, hadran alach elu dvarim, hadran alach dvarim, elu dvarim. Haroyim makom shnasa benisim. Let's just begin the first line of the Mishnah Num Daled. A person that sees a place that miracles were done in Israel for the Jewish people. You say the whole bracha who did miracles for our forefathers in this place, and that draws to a close. Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis. This next parak is super exciting with loads of different diverse topics, so stay tuned.